begin today's conversation, let's get to know our guest. Air Vice Marshal Anil Golani was commissioned into the fighter stream of the Indian Air Force in December 1982. During his distinguished career, he flew the Ajit and Jaguar aircraft and went on to serve in key leadership roles, including both the Andaman and Nicobar Command and the Strategic Force Command, making him one of the few officers to have held senior appointments in both joint service commands. An alumnus of the Royal College of Defence Studies, London, Air Vice Marshal Golani has also been a prolific voice in strategic affairs, authoring numerous articles and several books on air power, national security, and military strategy. Today, he serves as the Director General of the Centre for Aerospace Power and Strategic Studies, where he continues to shape strategic thought and the defence discourse in India.
They say air power starts in sky, but in reality, it starts much earlier. It starts in ideas, in strategy, and in the minds of those who are tasked to prepare for tomorrow's challenge. Welcome to the inaugural episode of Beyond the Cockpit. And what would be more fitting than starting this conversation with a respected scholar, a dedicated air warrior, and the Director General of Center for Aerospace Power and Strategic Studies, Air Vice Marshal Anil Golani, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on the show, Savni and Tanmay. I look forward to this dialogue, and it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Right, sir. So starting off, sir, while doing some research, I did see that the institute was originally called the Center for Air Power and Strategic Studies, right? Before the shift into aerospace power and strategic studies. So is this the next preparing for the next generation of warfare, so as to speak, or what could be attributed to the change?
When I took over as Director General of this center, it was known as the Center for Air Power Studies. The reason for calling it Center for Air Power Studies was because the founder Director General, after having worked in IDSA, which is the Ministry of Defense think tank for a long period of 14 years, realized that there is no think tank which is looking at air power. And so he founded this Center for Air Power Studies. And it was running like the Center for Air Power Studies. Now, after I took over, I realized that we are also one of the only think tanks in the country which is looking at nuclear issues. We look at nuclear energy security and strategy. We also look at India's neighborhood, and air power has now transcended into space as well, so it becomes aerospace. So I thought, in the fitness of things and the work that we do, the name must also reflect that, and therefore I took this up with the trust which governs us to change the name from Center for Air Power Studies to Center for Aerospace Power and Strategic Studies. The CAPS acronym remained the same. It just was an
So,
extra S
how
that we
did
called
this
CAPS.
entire journey start with you? I mean, what was that one instance that sparked your interest in this field?
I superannuated from service in end of 2019, and soon after that, COVID broke. I was looking for opportunities to work somewhere, and in normal course of time, I would have joined the civil aviation sector outside. In fact, I had got an appointment already to join as the director of a flying school, and I would have done that where young students would have been groomed as pilots and all. But then COVID happened and the airline industry went into a tailspin. Now reading was a passion with me from childhood, and about a year and a half later, I got this opportunity. I got a call to ask to join as the additional director general here at the Center for Air Power Studies then, and I said, let me give this a shot. And having been here now for 5 years, I realized that probably this was my true calling, and it has been a really tremendous journey.
Right, sir. So as you mentioned before, being the DG here as well, you weren't just the DG here. You were also not just a fighter pilot. You were also in the strategic forces command. You were also in, I believe, basic intelligence as well as some space verticals as well, sir. So could you just explain what exactly you did during those tenures and how that has impacted, like, in the various verticals of research we do here at CAPS?
So I think the beauty of a career in the armed forces is that no two appointments that you tenant in your service are the same, except for the initial years, 14, 15 years, where you're into active flying, doing fighter flying, which is in any case very demanding. From commanding an air defense base to commanding an operational base which had fighters and helicopters, to having worked in a tri-services command as the joint Air Force competent commander, to going abroad for a year's course on international security and strategy. So I think all these have in some ways added layers of knowledge to your thinking, which has helped increase not only your exposure but also your learning of how not only the armed forces in the country, but the others outside also function in the way in which they make strategy, fight wars, and look at national security.
So, throughout your service, such a rigorous service that you've done, there must have been instances which were very challenging. There must have been instances which would have seemed more like a hurdle, right? So, what was that one incident that turned into a learning experience and which impacted you then and continues to impact you like even today?
So uh, I think your life's journey is made up of series of events and challenges as you encounter them in your day-to-day life. I think very early on in my career in the Air Force, when I was just a cadet, it was just my fourth solo sortie. I had a engine flame out, which is an engine failure, and with no radio communication with the air traffic control or with my leader, and it was at low level, so I had to eject out of the aircraft and punch out. So I realized that when it comes to survival, you're on your own very early on in service. And subsequently, as I grew in service, there have been many challenges, there have been many opportunities, and I think they've all in some way or the other added to the learning process.
Yeah, so speaking about your ejection, sir, do you still happen to have the Martin Baker kit at hand, which they?
I think I'm proud to be a member of the Caterpillar Club, which is the Martin Baker Club. I think if I am not mistaken, at last count, there were, I think, more than 7,000 people who were members of this Martin Baker Club who, the seat which has saved lives. Yes, I do have my parachute somewhere in my boxes. It is still packed, and I also have the helmet which I wore at the time when I ejected. I was not yet 21 at that stage.
That's definitely interesting to know as someone who's not aware of all of this. So my next question would be currently the dynamics when it comes to security environment are constantly changing. So what is that one issue or a question that you feel that researchers interested in this field today should try and answer and which has been overlooked for a very long time?
So I don't think anything has been overlooked. The way I see it is, as a researcher, I feel it is very important for researchers and scholars to keep the curiosity alive. So having done that, I think any analysis that you do or any conclusion that you arrive at should actually be based on deep research. And unless you do that, you will not be able to come to the correct deduction or analysis. So I think our scholars are doing wonderful work. Their work is getting recognized not only in India but internationally as well. And I think the experiences that we've had as a country in fighting the wars, including the last skirmish that we had with Pakistan during Op Sindoor, have all been great learning experiences. And I think we are all working towards making the armed forces and the nation more strong, secure, potent, whichever way you take it.
Definitely.
Yeah, so going by what your last sentence, sir. So when I look at CAPS, I see that it's a air power based think tank, sir. So what exactly does it do, sir? Does it contribute to discourse, or does it also influence perhaps a doctrine of the Indian Air Force based on the studies between?
So I think it does all of this, what you spoke of, starting with getting young students like you to do internship with us where we expose young minds to national security, air and space power. To these scholars which carry out deep dive research into manned unmanned systems, drones, artificial intelligence, cyber war, and these technologies, to also carrying out studies on the doctrine of the Air Force, which we are tasked to do, as also grooming, the officers into critical thinking, which we do through our one of our flagship programs, which is the Warfare and Aerospace Strategy Program. So we do all of this, and in fact, the last doctrine of the Indian Air Force of 2022 was written by the graduating students of the Warfare and Aerospace Strategy Program. So I think we are doing our bit to, everything. Yeah.
So for
Definitely an influence there, right, sir?
so for our viewers who are new to this entire field, if you could just simplify the concept of air power for them.
Uh, Air power, when one thinks of air power, one thinks that it is only the Air Force, but it is not the Air Force. It is the total aviation assets of the country, which includes the civil airlines as well. It includes the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the BSF and other paramilitary forces. Every organization that flies aircraft, the entire resource of the nation with its capabilities actually all comes under this term of air power. And in times of a conflict, the nation is at liberty to get all these assets under their own control to wage war and to help in the nation, achieving its political objectives.
Right.
Right, sir. Now, considering talking about air power, sir, I'd like to draw back to the recent skirmish we had with Pakistan, sir. Sir, how do you think, are there any revelations through this conflict you feel we will be having in the air power field, especially considering Pakistan is considered more to be a near peer adversary, and we have some shortage of assets to supplement the other fronts of our country as well, sir? So is there a shift to do more with less, or something along those lines?
So, I always believe that one must never underestimate one's adversary. And Pakistan is a peer adversary. There is no denying that. There has been a lot of talk in the media, both written, electronic, and social, about the lack of numbers as far as the fighter aircraft inventory of the Indian Air Force is concerned. While efforts are on to plug this gap, it is going to take some time, and it is not something which will happen, as of tomorrow. Having said that, I think what the Indian Air Force tries to do is to make the most of what it has, and that is done in three ways. One is the human resource that we have, the aircrew, which makes a major difference when it comes to two aircraft, with similar capabilities fighting against each other. Second is, trying to keep a surprise and innovation at hand. And third is to get the maximum, you know, bang for the buck. That means I rotate my aircraft and I turn around my aircraft in double quick time and keep all assets serviceable, so that I can generate more out of the assets that I have, and keep them serviceable. So I think we've done our bit, and the commanders of the field did a lot of innovative thinking, and that's how we got the better of our adversary in the last skirmish.
So, which is that one myth that you've heard across the younger generation, across young researchers about air power, which you would want to bust?
Think looking at air power, the myths that often gets talked about is that air power is escalatory, and that the moment air power enters into a contest, then it breaks into a war which you cannot turn back. But I think that's a myth which has been proven by this recent example, and also during the Kargil war that we had last time. You saw it, that it did not lead to a full-scale conflict between India and Pakistan. And I think it's very important to understand air power is only an instrument of national power. Unless we understand the limitations of air power and its advantages, you will not be able to use it to its full potential. You're seeing the conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran, where air power has been used extensively, but that conflict actually does not come to an end. We are still, the talk is going on of a deal and truce or whatever.
Right.
Sir, considering we are in this next generation of aerial warfare, where almost all engagements, unless a pilot has done something extremely wrong, would occur in a BVR range, sir. Sir, you come from a generation of flying an aircraft which was perhaps a bit more kinetic in terms of the warfare, sir. Is there some part of you which romantic part of you which feels a bit disheartened seeing about how there's this change into the warfare? And could you expand upon your own aircraft which you would flew and its role, sir?
Yeah, so I think my journey of flying the fighters in the Indian Air Force began with the Hunter and then the Ajit, which was the erstwhile NAT. And that aircraft was, you felt as if you strapped wings on your back and you were flying in the air. It gave you that kind of a feel. I think up to 10,000 feet, it could outclimb a MiG-21 as well. And the only thing that aircraft lacked was an air-to-air missile, but otherwise in size it was so small in those days when you didn't have air-to-air radars and all. It was very difficult to spot this aircraft from the sky because your engagements were for a gun kill within visual range itself. Now, the nature of warfare, while it remains constant, the character has continued to change with the evolution of technology. And now with a beyond visual range engagement, you're only seeing the adversary on the scope and you're firing a missile. So I suppose it probably doesn't give you the kind of thrill which people who fought in the 1971 war, and achieved air-to-air kills, which they got. So, but that's the way things are, and that's where the future is going to be. This is going to be the norm.
Conversely, sir, again looking back again the last conflict and the subsequent conflicts within this era we are seeing, sir, there seems to be an impression of air power. Earlier used to be it's just the pilot, sir. Right now, as we are moving to BVR, we are moving into a lot more environments which facilitate kills in air. There's more emphasis on fighter controllers. Even there's a whole environment which is existing, sir. Could you also enlighten us about that? AVAX or any other assets?
Yeah, so we have moved from a concept which from a kill chain to a kill web. Now this kill web, obviously, everything has to function in harmony and in a synchronous kind of manner, where the AVAX, the fighter controller, the electronic warfare, the EM spectrum, the weapon system, the missile, the pilot, and everything has to it's fall into place for you to achieve a kill or to get your objectives. So it's uh, a fighter pilot, yes, he's an important link in the chain, but so is the person who's serviced the aircraft, so is the person who's sitting behind the scope, so is the person who's doing the electronic warfare part or jamming. I think everyone is important, and every one in this chain needs to do their role for the mission to succeed.
Right, sir. So coming on to from this point, in national security now is not just about political science, or it's not just about the political stature of a country. There are data scientists, there are cyber analysts who are a part of it, which is that one field which has come up in this domain, which was the most unexpected for you.
Think artificial intelligence, in my opinion, is playing a major role in warfare, because it is a big tool in reducing your decision cycle. The OODA loop, so as to say, from minutes, hours to minutes to seconds to milliseconds. This is a technology which is going to play an increasing role in warfare, the way I see it in the future.
Right, sir. So then, coming on to the next question, a lot of us are aspiring to be researchers in this field. So, what are those prominent qualities that you would want us to develop as researchers, which will help us aid in the research of national security?
Firstly, I feel that any field that you work in, whether it's in research or corporate or outside, wherever you are, I think we are all contributing towards national security on some way or the other. And like I mentioned earlier, for the researchers, it is very essential. Reading habit is very important. You need to, the more you read, the more you learn, and the more you absorb, the more you are able to distill wisdom out of the reading that you get. And curiosity is extremely essential for a researcher, to be able to search, get all the data, get the facts together, and draw your conclusions and analysis. It's important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sir, as we look more conflict towards the southeast as well, sir, there seems to be an invasion of Taiwan, which a lot of people say is inevitable, and the region is heating up, sir. Considering the Strait of Malacca is quite important, and the Andaman Nicobar chain has reached to it, sir. Of course, there is a political argument about commercial interests being there as well as military interests. How important is it in a purely military and strategic value, sir? How could we project, for example, if you had carte blanche, if you had a blank check as a base command or something, how would we project to our most capability in that region, sir?
So I think if you look at it from a geostrategic location, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands sit at a vantage point as far as uh, geostrategy is concerned. Strike that channel, but uh, development of that area is not something new. I think this project was moved in the 1980s when the Rajiv Gandhi government was there. There was a detailed project report prepared to develop this as a transshipment container terminal and all. And of course, after that, the tsunami took place and all, and it didn't happen. So I think a lot of work has gone into planning this project. Of course, there are people who argue against it because of environmental concerns, but in my opinion, all these have been taken care of and the necessary clearances obtained to ensure that it doesn't affect, the coral reefs and the island and the jungles and everything. Uh, in my opinion, it is inevitable. It must happen. It will happen for national good, and it will help in national security to increase our presence at a critical location where I think we need our presence. Not only that, if you look at it from an economic point of view and a tourism point of view also, it will bring in a lot of jobs. It will bring in a lot of revenue, and I think it will become like a tourist spot which many people would like to come to and visit. And having served there myself, I think those are wonderful, beautiful islands. Uh,
So, when it comes to projecting a country's national security based character, we see that US has significantly played a crucial role in that. We see Pakistan has a DGPR within the forces itself. What do you think that India should change or India should include in terms of projecting a much more stronger national security character across?
so I think we probably realize that cognitive warfare plays an important role. Uh, uh, but I think the Indian Armed Forces are of a belief and conviction that what is important is that we must do what we are supposed to do rather than playing the narrative warfare. Because at the end of Operation Sindoor, in the beginning, you would have realized that the narrative was with Pakistan, and as evidence started to come out in the open domain and it became more prominent, the narrative obviously changed. But in this world where attention spans are very short and opinions get formed very easily, I think it is important to invest in this domain as well, which the nation has realized, and I believe there are attempts made and to ensure that this kind of a thing doesn't happen in the future.
So we've been talking. So we've been talking about next generation warfare and fighter aircraft, sir. But I believe the United States recently placed an order for I believe F-15 fighter aircraft, sir. So is there? This brings a question: is about the relevancy of 4 and 4.5 generation aircraft, and people would argue that this is all the more reason we do need to pump out more indigenous Tejas aircraft as well, because there seems to be still a place and a spot for this particular brand of aircraft. Would you not agree?
So, every fighter aircraft cannot be sixth generation. Quality has a quantity of its own. You need numbers as well, and there is a cost also involved. They don't come cheap. So this is a journey or transition that you will find that not only Indian Air Force but many air forces have aircraft which are across generations and all, and then we use them in whatever role we feel appropriate, and ensure that these aircraft are protected and are secure from getting attrited in the conflict. So I think these aircraft will definitely play a role. The Tejas Mark II, the AMCA, and you know
Right. So, which war, according to you, a war or a skirmish, has played a major role in defining air power for India and has defined the roles much more clearly, which was probably underestimated?
So if you look at the 71 conflict, I think air power played a decisive role uh, in the liberation of East Pakistan and creation of Bangladesh, both by the paradrop, Tangel drop that happened, and by the attack on the governor's house. The other example is of the 1962 war, where air power did not get used, and the nation had to suffer a defeat, which still rankles deeply in the Indian soul. So you have both these examples.
So again, in Operation Sindoor, my main question always used to be, okay, we won this conflict, but by showing our winning blow, we've revealed our cards. In the sense that Pakistan next time would know perhaps that we would be using precise standoff munitions, and so how do you think Pakistan would adapt to a future skirmish, since using, as you mentioned, air power is not escalatory anymore, and this widens the margin for more future conflicts? So how do you think Pakistan would try to counter Indian air power, and how would India also try to circumvent that?
So I think Pakistan, I mean, this conflict made it very evident that the nexus between Pakistan and China has become strong. It is here to stay. In my opinion, China uses Pakistan, as a tool or platform to test its own weapon systems and all. And India is cognizant of this fact, and there are efforts on to improve our capability. I would not like to talk about it in the open domain.
Right.
When you compare in terms of the generation of aircraft as far as air power is concerned, you compare in terms of numbers, China is ahead of us and is superior. There is no denying that. At the same time, if you compare in terms of capability, when I talk of capability, with the platform, the human resource element, which is there, I think we are probably better off, and enough to deter them from entering into a conflict. So, having entered into a conflict, I cannot say, which way it goes, because a lot depends on the adversary also. But I think our capability at the moment is adequate to deter China from getting into any misadventure.
Right.
Adding on to her question, sir, again, in the conflict arising in China, I have assumed that India would be in a defensive position during that time. So, do you think that in that scenario, Indian air power would be favorably able to project their dominance as compared to the Chinese side, considering the geographical aspect as well as?
Would be a barrier as far as India is concerned in terms of the capability that we have. But like I said in the beginning also, if you look at the numbers, we are not where we would like to be. And again, I'd reiterate that even though we would be defensive, I think we can do fairly well to protect India's national integrity and its space, you know.
So you have seen this entire domain for a very long time now. So what do you think has been the changes that have come in the field of strategic culture, and what other changes that you would want to see? How would you want it to be much better in the coming years?
So if you look at the strategic culture, I think increasingly nations have started to use force to secure their national interests. There is the empires of the world have failed. The UN has become defunct. Americans have isolated themselves from their allies in their national interest. So this, in my opinion or view, is a major change that has happened in the world today, where each nation is looking at its own national interest. And that is why probably I think when you look at India, we also look at partnerships with other countries which are based on issues. So it's an issue based relationship. We have good relations with Iran as well as Israel. You know, these are cases in point. This is a major shift. And I think what is important for us as a nation is to continue growing economically, to continue becoming strong, and to continue building up the capability of our military and our armed forces.
Right.
Yes, sir. So, as we discussed, sir, air power. Somebody who's not in the forces, somebody who's not had the privilege of coincidentally serving in each of those roles, sir, what would you recommend them to read? Are there any particular, would you place emphasis on particular researches and particular verticals to go about it, sir? And are there any recommendations of books and publications you would have?
So, Jasjeet Singh, the founder, Director General of the Center, Defense from the Skies, is a excellent book to read. As far as the Air Force and the growth of the Indian Air Force and Air Power is concerned, Arjun Subramaniam's book on India's wars, India's wars, and then Full Spectrum. These are also good books. Apart from that, we have our own Unikata Chair of Excellence scholars who are doing very good work on digging out the history of the Indian Air Force. You look at CAF's publications, we've done Air Force in its centennial decade. So there is a lot to read, and I think these days, the internet and your resources which are available have made things much easier for people to get their reviews and to read. My only advice to the young generation is use AI tools to enhance your knowledge, but nothing beats reading a 300, 400 page book line by line and back to back.
Right. So 10 years down the line, if you were to give an advice and a guidance to the future chief of the air staff, what would that be?
It's a tough and a difficult question. I think uh, I don't think a future air chief would need my advice. Having become the chief, will know what is to be done best in for national interest.
On lighter note, sir, is there a very contrarian opinion you hold, which sometime down the line you would or be saying, "I told you so"?
No, there is nothing like that. Nothing that comes to my mind. If I told you so. So.
So which is your favorite aircraft, and if you have some memory attached which you would want to share so that the veterans watching this would probably relate those moments?
So I have essentially flown the Western aircraft only. I have flown the Hunter, the Nat, and the Jaguar. I just have about 10, 11 hours on the MiG-21, so I have not flown that so much. But my eternal favorite remains the Nat, the Ajit, which was in the Air Force. We used to wear a patch on our shoulder which said the last real fighter, because that aircraft didn't have a trainer. So when you flew solo, it was actually your first solo. It remains my eternal favorite.
You're a Jaguar pilot, sir. Uh, I have been reading that apparently Rampage missiles were utilized during Operation Sindoor, sir. And if so, it would be huge. There's that celebration of that Ankh still got it. There's a saying going around, "Ke our old workhorse is still relevant, sir." Did you feel anything regarding that as well, sir? Ke it's in the generation of fifth.
The Jaguar, the Indian Air Force today has 6 squadrons of the Jaguars. So it forms a very important place, and I think the second largest inventory after the Su-30s is that of the Jaguars. What gives me more satisfaction and pleasure is the fact that I had raised the Harpy unit back in 1999, and that was used effectively in this conflict.
Thank you so much, sir. I believe it was. Thank you so much, sir. I believe it was a wonderful conversation. I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this will be reliving a lot of moments. A lot of young researchers like the two of us will have a lot more insights onto how do we perceive air power and how do we go about in that very field. So
Thank you so much for your time, sir. As I feel any time with you would be too less. The 1,000 different questions I'd love to ask, but I think I'd really like to thank you for your time and contribution, sir.
Thank you, Savni and Tanmay. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you very much, and wish both of you all the best. Thank you.
so